So we've heard so much about Uranus and Gemini, especially when it comes to collective impact. But this is not a collective forecast, not a big picture systems conversation, or the one that is about global impact, right? Collective consciousness. All of that is important. However, I want to bring something that lands closer to home. This one is about you. So we know that Uranus entered Gemini on April 26th. And I want to more so speak on personal activation. So, what this transit is doing at the level of identity, your creative voice, and how you generate. I'm sure you are quite interested in how does Uranus and Gemini play or affect my life personally. So let's get into it. Initially, when I had a piece on Uranus and Gemini, I was getting the collective energy, the impact that Uranus and Gemini would have. And I was like, I'm feeling something a little bit more personal. I'm feeling something a little bit more deeply. And the glass ceiling energy came up. Now, some of you who are familiar with my platform, who are a client of mine, you know I like to use the example of glass ceiling. Usually we associate glass ceiling with corporate, with feeling like you're having, experiencing limitations within your job ladder, performance, raises, positioning. And a lot of it is attributed to, whether it's based on your race, whether they like you, whether they probably blackballed you, whether your gender is heavily affecting your positioning within the company, all these kind of different things, right? Your age, even. But this is more so the glass ceiling on life experiences. So the glass ceiling was never about the actual ceiling. A lot of us left a kind of invisible limit on experience, on pleasure, on depth, and even financial abundance. A quiet knowing that there is more sitting just above where you currently are. And something has been keeping that gap intact. Uranus does not negotiate with that ceiling. It does not ask if you're ready. It ain't even polite. It applies pressure to the structure that is holding the limitation in place. And when that structure can no longer hold, life moves. Now, sometimes it looks like an unexpected loss, right? A relationship that ends without warning, a job that disappears, a plan that collapses on the very thing you thought was stable. The part of your life that felt the safest is often the very thing that was holding the old version of you together. And it is also the first thing Uranus touches. The disruption is not punishment. Like we tend to think like when things don't go our way, like we've done something wrong, or God, source, creator, the universe is punishing us uh, for karmic justice or imbalance or things that we may have done in the secret. And, the spook is there, right? The spook is spoken, but it is the mechanism. Life does not ease you out of what is no longer yours. It makes staying impossible. So think about it. A lot of us, when something gradually happens or occurs, sometimes we tiptoe back into those situations, giving excuses for second chances. When something is disrupted, though, when something almost traumatic, if not traumatic, happens, that's when we wake up, right? Unfortunately, fortunately, what is like what I like to say. It is worth noting, though, this transit begins in Taurus season. I thought that was kind of interesting. And Taurus carries the affirmation I have, right? Taurus is traditionally linked to security, stability, and the material, but it is equally about the beliefs that generate the life you currently have. So, what is your belief system built on as far as abundance, as far as stability? Do you feel like you have to get it from someone? Do you have to rely on someone? Do you feel like what you're doing right now is sustainable? Are you forcing your way through a certain lifestyle that is not in alignment, not in harmony with your energetic makeup? Do you carry beliefs from ancestors that have passed down certain lies, I call them unconsciously, where it's perpetual, right? It's generational impact of how do you handle possessions? Do you value them more than life experiences, than memories, than people? Do you put them on a pedestal, people or material? The understanding of what you possess, what you hold, what you have decided is available to you. Are you perpetuating a belief that you have not yet lived? So, for instance, we say we're creators, we say we're supreme, we say we are gods and goddesses, we say that we are sovereign, but has that really truly reflected in your life? This ain't about judging critically. It is okay to judge, contrary to what people say. It is okay to evaluate, to assess, right, your life. And are your beliefs in alignment with what your life is currently reflecting right now? Where you're going? Are you comfortable with what is, because what is feels manageable? And manageable has become its own kind of prison. So sometimes when we handle these relationships a certain way, or family members, jobs, circumstances, even being a parent, right? Or being responsible for others, that can be the very cage that we need to let ourselves out of, because we have taken on a certain identity that is comfortable, that is complacent, passive, even palatable. And then in essence, we suffer, right? We end up suffering because we're not living authentically. You can actually be you while being a parent. You can actually be you while being a servant of your community, if you want to call it that, right? If you want to be of service to the collective. That doesn't mean you're a pushover. That doesn't mean you're supposed to just accept any and everything. And it really goes back to how you value yourself. What is your value system built on? What are your pillars, right? What are your non negotiables? Have you begun to explore alternative realities? Or have you been fixed on the version of yourself that the current view allows? So sometimes we do get discouraged. We do feel like hopeless, where it's like, okay, I see myself with these things, with this certain lifestyle that is ideal. But how do I go from where I am to that? What does that even look like? Is it even achievable? Or is it something that is from a distance, possibly not in this lifetime? Have you been fixated with being with certain people, certain locations? Maybe those things and people are not in alignment with where you're going. It's not saying that you can't have love. Maybe not the love with those particular individuals or those types of individuals. You have been living flat. And visually, when I was channeling, I could actually see, like, you know, flat living, flat life, 2D style, where everything seems boring, and it's almost like you have to make your imagination work for you when you're really looking at a flat life. And what I mean by flat life, think about how screens have evolved from flat, dim, low resolution panels to displays so immersive you can almost feel the image extend beyond the glass, pulling you into it. The experience lifts off the surface and it actually invites you in. And so that's what I'm saying as far as your life. Like, have you been feeling like it's just been straight up paperwork, only journaling your aspirations or your thoughts, not really taking them off the paper and living it, experimenting, researching, right? Some of us been living flat, not because life has been empty. No, not necessarily, but because we have been operating in a limited resolution. So our relationships don't really have that full depth. Creative work held within the acceptable range. Identity shaped by more by what others can receive than what is actually true. So we think that we have to do dilute ourselves, dilute our work, our creativity, because you think maybe no one will get it, will think you are weird, or put you in a certain compartment or identity that you really detest, right? This is not just creative flatness though. It shows up in spirituality, in your relationships, and how you present you and how you are in your body, and how present you are in your own body. So a lot of us are operating on autopilot. We feel that we have to do it this way because you can't see it any other way. It has to be this way. But sometimes you need to zoom out. So, in how present you are in your own body, and whether you are actually living your life or narrating it from a safe distance, that is coming up to the surface right now. Gemini energy allows you to step back and see the whole picture, to zoom out without detaching, to hold multiple truths simultaneously without needing to collapse them into one. I am a big fan of detaching when it comes to things being very sensitive, triggering emotionally. I know I will have strong responses to. Some people, when they detach, unfortunately, they become numb. So learn your balance. Okay. That is why it just really depends on the person on how you can handle the art of detachment. Experiment with it. See what holds true for you, what's better for you. But the point is to be able to hold multiple truths simultaneously without needing to collapse them into one. Be okay with that diversity. Be okay with having multiple perspectives. That gives you range. That gives you true color, because we're not flat, we're not linear beings, not those with souls. You know, they say like two, three, or multiple things can be true. You know, it doesn't always have to be black and white. Being in this state, it has cinematic quality. The ability to observe the scene you are in and recognize where you have been a flat character in your own story. Remember, you gotta show main character energy, but it starts with you. It starts with your belief system. It starts with your knowing of who you are, remembering who you are, with even ownership and being flexible with the truths that come up. So, say for instance, you've lived your whole life and these type of principles or values were very important to you, were very essential to your daily practices. You've upheld them, passed them down, all of that good stuff. But then you came across some new information that will more than likely override what you currently have or integrate what you currently have with the new idea or belief. That's self mastery, that's growth. And if you know, like I know, Gemini is the sister sign or the opposite of Sagittarius. So you're not really, even though those are opposing signs or energies, you're not really in some form of tension if you are open to receiving the energy of Sagittarius, which is exploring different paths of knowledge and wisdom, philosophies, being able to travel and obtain or acquire, have fun, just like Gemini with the duality, but not be so fixated on the outcome, being open to it. We'll get into this a little bit later, but I just want to touch on it right now. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter expands whatever is currently going on. So whether it's pessimism, whether it's abundance, fortune, and optimism, whatever your current energy is at that given moment, the current state of your energy, that's what it expands. All right. Now, Uranus and Gemini is not asking you to add more. Now, I do encourage you to learn a new skill, read, research, even have active play, active imagination by exploring different aspects of yourselves. Tapping into your inner child. Gemini is heavy into that energy. And I do find a lot of Saggies, like Sagittarius, men and women, actually love to do that too. They like to tap into their inner child. They do not like to be restricted. Confinement is not a thing for them, which makes sense if since they're connected to Jupiter. It only makes sense. It's like a boundless neutral energy. But Uranus is not asking you to add more. It is asking you to go deeper into what is already there. Now, some of us, we tend to stay on the surface because it's comfortable. When you get down in the fields, when you get down into subconscious and unconscious, generational, that's when it starts getting like blurry, right? Where some people get overwhelmed, and that's when they want to detach from their bodies and tap into plant medicine and different things that will help them disassociate with their current experience. But that's not it, y'all. living passively because you want to spiritual bypass, because you want to avoid certain encounters or even responsibilities is not the play. It's pretty much avoidance, and it's really going to make your life suck if you do that. Just being real about it. The real play is tapping in, knowing that you're safe, knowing that you are secure, you're stable, and you won't allow yourself, you trust yourself so much that you won't even allow yourself to fail. You just can't. You all have lessons, but you cannot lose. So your identity is on the stand. Gemini is an air sign ruled by Mercury, the planet of thought, communication, and the mind. It governs how we make sense of things, the frameworks we build to navigate reality, the stories we tell ourselves and each other. All of that is on the stand right now. And here is what Uranus is doing to that. The justifications you have adopted to make your current identity feel logical, reasonable. The ones that explain why you are the way you are. You know, a lot of us blame it on personality. Why you cannot. Why now is not the time. Why the version of you is what is possible. Those no longer hold. Now, not because someone has argued you out of them, but because life is making them visibly untrue. You will actually see the contradictions. I just heard explore contradictions. You say you want this thing, but then you don't want this that comes with it. Then you say you like that over there, but then you realize you don't really like that over there. You just like the comfort or the, how can I say, the image of what that, the perception of what that looks like. So say for instance, you say how I envision my life being in a luxe apartment, but everything in that luxe apartment is not you. You would actually, if you are truthfully speaking, would prefer to be in a foreign country in a village somewhere, because all the things that all the attributes that you are really seeking, that you're truly hungry or passionate about, that really makes you feel home, is in a village like communal setting, instead of you being isolated within this high story or luxe apartment or condo. You actually like to be involved in your community. You like to grow a garden and all these kind of things, but that contradicts being in a luxe apartment that's secluded from all of that. You can have both, where maybe they do have garden fixtures on the property as far as that loft. Maybe you need to look for that or that apartment. That's just a real surface level example, but I'm sure you get my point. Are you living authentically or are you living palatably? Have you been shrinking yourself for acceptance in your community, your relationships, your work, your creative output? When was the last time your inner child had creative control of your life? When do you allow your inner child to play? And I'm not talking about when you want to be sneaky or vindictive. Sometimes we allow those other aspects, the shadow aspects in our inner child, to come out when we want to get our lick back. But when have you given that inner child a voice You seem like you punish your inner child very often when it comes to adulting, when it comes to being hard on yourself, not giving yourself grace, when it's those times where you feel like you're beating yourself up because you're not where you want to be, looking for perfectionism. A lot of us, when I was thinking about this, we are really heavily influenced by our culture. So some of us may come from the Caribbean. Some of us, may come from ancestry that is about responsibility, that is about having multiple jobs for security, that's about you have to be a doctor or a lawyer or some form of title as such. You have to have so many degrees. And if you're not, then you don't measure up, you're not good enough. And you have to marry a lawyer, you have to marry a doctor, those kind of things. Being well connected, well respected. But even in those instances, if you think about it, your past generations weren't those things. So where did that come from? Is that the badge of honor where you actually quote unquote make it and that is prestigious and acceptable? Who set the bar? And is it truly authentically you? Now you can very well have the multiple jobs. You can have the degrees, you can have the titles, you can have all of that, just as long as it's authentic. You have been a bore. Yes, I said it. You have been a bore, not because you lack depth, but because you have been playing it safe. And safe stopped being interesting a long time ago. Now it's a lot of habits. Maybe the permission you are looking for is not dramatic. Maybe it's breathing, laughing, painting, dancing without a reason, learning a new language or a new skill purely because it calls to you, allowing pleasure to be a practice and not a reward. So, Uranus and Gemini is the era of full creative authority. The question is whether you are willing to take it. Now, the consciousness is expanding, whether you invite it or not. We tend to credit water signs, Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, with the most psychic sensitivity, the deepest intuitive access, the ability to perceive what lives beyond the visible. Their energetic makeup, their fluidity, their permeability to other dimensions are very real. It's very real, but don't sleep. Uranus and Gemini is expanding that conversation. This transit carries the frequency of heightened psychic awareness. I don't even know if anyone is talking about this. I tell you guys time and time again not to discredit myself, but so you can truly get that I'm not an astrologer. I sense energy. I know a good portion of astrology, right? And I'm open to learning, but I'm not out here calculating formulas and generating exact nodes and all this kind of stuff and degrees. I understand it, but I more so tap into the energy and see what it's actually communicating. So Uranus and Gemini gave me the energy of psychic abilities, gave me the energy of the line that has been between psychic abilities and the nervous system, our nerves, our consciousness. We're all separate experiences when actually there is no veil. It does not exist. And they are going to have several discoveries to prove this. Okay? A lot of them already know this. They've just made you feel like it's separate when in actuality is not. So, this transit, it carries the frequency of heightened psychic awareness, telepathic sensitivity, and elevated consciousness across the collective, not just for those with heavy water placements. The mind is being upgraded, the channels are opening. You more than likely are going through a series of DNA activations, upgrades, unlocking codes within you that are dormant. And Uranus is not subtle about how this happens. There is no gentle, flower moment, no woo that eases you into a spiritual awakening. It is more like being fired from a job that never permitted your full creative expression. And suddenly, with nowhere to pour yourself into that no longer fits, you turn all the way on. You start building, learning, owning what was always there, but had no room to breathe. A lot of things were put on hold because we did not allow them to come through. We didn't think we were ready. We didn't give permission. But Uranus again is not giving us that green light of, hey, is it okay? Can we come through? It's not waiting for that, not at all. So some of you will unlock a healing modality or a psychic gift during this transit. For some, it will feel new. For others, it will be a remembering, something always present that a disruption finally gave you permission to claim. A phenomenon, an event, a sudden shift in circumstance will often be the trigger. The discovery phase of this transit is real. Exploring, researching, acquiring new skills and knowledge for personal depth and professional expansion is not distraction. Don't see it as such. For many, it is the actual work of this era. So, the times that you want to get on your computer and code, I think they call it vibe code, those times where you come up with those brilliant ideas and you may want to incorporate AI, those times where you are going to another country and tapping into the frequency of that dome of reality unlocks something within you. You discover something about yourself that actually can be put into your spiritual backpack for you to use later or now. They have already confirmed when you learn, when you obtain a new skill, when you reprogram yourself by simply changing your hands when you brush your teeth. The hand that you use, that dominant hand that you usually throw with, or tie your shoe, or that one that initially reacts to what to do next, switch it up and rely on the other one that is not as dominant. That actually helps with new neural pathways. Traveling can unlock that. Learning something new can unlock neural pathways as far as development. So you're constantly evolving, you're constantly developing yourself. So this is the actual work. So already free, but are you finishing? Now, this section of this discussion is for those of you who are already moving, already creating, already flowing, already generating the ideas and experiences at a pace where most people cannot match. If the last few sections did not land for you as a mirror, this one might. So I told you all the positives, right, of these signs, but I really want to get into the shadow. We're not going to stay there, but just for your awareness, the Gemini shadow is not always paralysis. Sometimes it is the opposite, meaning an abundance of initiation with a quiet trail of incompletion behind it. Another idea arrives before the last one lands. Overload. Information overload is what I'm hearing. Another direction opens before the current one has been fully walked. The project gets to 80% and something shinier pulls the attention elsewhere. Brilliant in concept, perpetually in progress. So Uranus pulls on this shadow. Gems are those with Gemini placements, energies. Think of it as the tablecloth being yanked from the table. Everything you had neatly arranged is suddenly exposed mid-air. Uranus and Gemini will nudge this pattern first, then press it, then make the cost of it impossible to ignore. The era of infinite play without commitment is closing. Now, remember I told you this is not about punishment. Not because freedom is being revoked. Don't look at this negatively. Change your mindset. But because the next level of what you are building requires you to actually finish the thing. What is that thing that you need to complete that you've been procrastinating on, that said that you're not ready and it's not perfect enough, that people won't get it? Analysis paralysis, yes, but I want you to go a little bit deeper on those shadows, because a lot of it is built on what you experienced in your childhood or the ages leading up to the age that you are right now. What has transpired? Adding another layer is not always expansion. Sometimes it's avoidance dressed as creativity, the overworked piece, the offer that keeps getting refined before it launches. The body of work that never quite arrives because there is always one more element to consider. That is Gemini energy tipping into its own excess. More is not always deeper. Knowing when something is complete is its own form of mastery. This is where the Sagittarius opposition becomes the medicine. So hear me out. Gemini and Sagittarius, remember I told you I was going to get into this, sit directly across from each other in the zodiac sign channel, the wheel. And the opposition is always an invitation toward balance. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, as I explained before, the planet of expansion, philosophy, higher truth, and willingness to go all the way in. Whereas Gemini collects, Sagittarius commits. Where Gemini samples, teases even, Sagittarius pilgrimages. One thing we're overstanding about Jupiter, it expands whatever it touches. That is not a guarantee of good fortune, even though we hear that a lot, especially when it comes to manifestation. It is simply amplification. It amplifies the energies at play. If you are operating from pessimism, scarcity, or a belief that things do not work out for you, Jupiter does not override that. It actually expands it. The planet is neutral. What it multiplies depends entirely on what you are already carrying. The Sagittarius frequency that is being offered here is not about slowing down either. It is about depth over breadth. So, the spiritual pilgrimage energy that I was speaking on shows up like a sabbatical, a retreat, a deliberate period of your soul nourishment. It is not retreat from the work. Remember, no avoidance here. It is a thing that refuels it. Sagittarius knows how to go somewhere fully. So to travel, to study, to sit inside a philosophy or a practice long enough to be changed by it rather than just informed by it. And that's one thing I can say. Both of their energies are interactive, Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini has that childlike energy, it likes to play, but it will dabble in a whole bunch of things and not necessarily collected in the sense of value. Sometimes it can come off as hoarding and just having just information that they can just pick and choose to have conversations about because they love to communicate, but really truly not embrace it in a sense as truth. Whereas Sagittarius energy will obtain certain knowledge or skills or things and will put that in their library to conduct further research. So Sagittarius knows how to go somewhere fully, again, to travel, to study, to sit out inside a philosophy or practice. There's some people that will go to yoga retreats or sit with monks or just go in nature. They don't even have to be with a group of beings or souls. They can just go on their own and have their own experiences through travel that awakens certain parts within them. So, long enough to be changed by it rather than just informed by it. Community is part of this medicine too. But Sagittarius teaches that genuine community starts inward. Knowing your own philosophy, your own truth, your own understanding before you bring it into exchange with others. The expansion through others is real, but it has roots. It does not just drift toward whatever is interesting in the moment. And again, not to shame or make you feel some type of way about Gemini energy. That's just what is. Just having that balance and knowing what energies are at play. What are you intentionally acting on? What energy are you in when you are exploring or experimenting? Now, there is the risk piece. Gemini can stay and play all day indefinitely because they're curious, naturally engaged, present in the exploration, but never quite stepping into the commitment that would make the thing real. Sagittarius takes the leap. Now, there are some Saggies out there that are a little reckless, but for the most part, not recklessly, but with the trust that the direction is right And the only way to find out is to actually go. That's what I can appreciate about Sagittarius. That that energy of surrender and trust that everything is orchestrating on my behalf, divine order, alignment, knowing that all is well, even in spite of. Whereas Gemini will be on the fence. They will have several thoughts going at the same time about something and may not take action on it until something really pushes them to allow to fully land. If you have been circling something, an offer, a creative work, a pivot, a version of yourself, this transit is asking you to land it. And it's not even because the timing is perfect. It's because staying in orbit is not serving you. It's no longer neutral. So there's going to be new ways to create, to communicate, and generate. Gemini energy has a particular gift for all of us, collectively and individually, talking things through until they make sense, until the framework clicks, until the language for something that has been formless finally arrives. So, for those of you building something, a body of work, a community, a creative space, or a practice, a business, this transit is the era of developing the language that is entirely your own, not borrowed frameworks, personal experience, knowledge, wisdom. I'm even hearing something like a knack. You have a knack for something, not the vocabulary of the industry you came from. No corporate jargon and none of that. Your own containers, your own architecture, your own way of naming what you do and who it is for. This is also the era of new creative forms. So, more freedom of expression, communication that breaks from the conventional, the safe, the gray, art that lives in new categories, community built on new terms, business structured around collaboration and exchange rather than the old transactional model. Hear me, AI does not replace this. However, it can support the architecture of it. New systems, new pathways, new programs that extend what you are already building. The tool serves the vision. The vision comes from you. Now, the containers built for this era, I have the creative transmission in the ion frequency circle. They weren't built from the old model. They were not built for palatability or mass consumption. They were built for exactly what Uranus and Gemini is calling for: authentic identity, original creative voice, and new ways of generating. So I have the creative transmission. It's a live activation for those who are ready to stop performing their creativity and start transmitting it. We are all channels. We just have various degrees of channeling. If Gemini rules how you think, communicate, and create, and Uranus is rewriting all of it, this is the space where that rewiring gets channeled into something real. I invite you. And the ion frequency circle. It holds the ongoing transmission as the era unfolds. So Uranus will be in Gemini through 2033. So it's not going to be a whole bunch of explosive action every single day. Okay. We got all the way up until 2033. This is not a 1 month conversation here. The circle is where you stay calibrated as the rewiring continues. So take what's resonating with you, leave the rest. And I'm going to say that again. Take what resonates. If it don't apply, you let it fly. So stay grounded, filter your water, go outside and move from the inside out. Be well.